Thanks, Joe. Meantime, Senator Elizabeth Warren introducing what she's calling an ultra-millionaire tax. It would be on fortunes of over $50 million, impacting the 100,000 richest households in the United States. Senator Warren says she expects the proposal to bring in at least $3 trillion in revenue over 10 years. And joining us right now to talk about all of it is Senator Elizabeth Warren. She serves, of course, on both the Banking and Finance Committees. Senator, thank you for joining us. You have stirred up quite a conversation, and we want to have it with you this morning. In particular, what I wanted to start here, I had a conversation with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen last week, and I asked her about the prospect of a wealth tax, and she said she thought it was, quote, very difficult with implementation problems. And I wanted to understand your thought about how this would work.
So I just want to start by saying if Janet Yellen is all on board except for implementation, we're in really good shape on this, because the implementation part is really a lot easier than it looks. Remember the way that the wealth tax is built. It says if your fortune is below $50 million, nothing. We're not talking to you. If it's above $50 million, your 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to pitch in 2 cents, 2 cents for every dollar above that. You hit $1 billion in assets, you got to pitch in a few pennies more. The nice thing about the way it's set up is we learned from some of the mistakes they made in Europe. So this version of the wealth tax says it covers all of your property. Doesn't matter whether it's held in stock or in real estate or in racehorses. Everything is covered, so there's no point in moving property around. Also, wherever you hold it, it is covered, whether you hold it here in the U.S., whether you hold it in the Cayman Islands. And remember, we are already valuing property. We do it at death. We value all real estate every year for real estate taxes. And valuing stock is not very hard. So I think we've kind of got the implementation part of this locked down.
Senator, what do you make, though, of the idea that some people believe this would be considered confiscatory, but perhaps more importantly, that oftentimes these are, quote unquote, unrealized gains? We've seen remarkable gains in the stock market this year, but who knows what's going to happen next year? We've seen Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires get made. But of course, it's a very volatile asset, if it's an asset at all.
You know, Andrew, I hope you're embarrassed to ask if 2 cents is confiscatory. This is 2 cents on assets above $50 million. And just to put that in a little context, since the pandemic, our 660 billionaires in America have increased their wealth by $1.3 trillion. This wealth tax will raise about $3 trillion over 10 years, as you started out. And what people should be thinking about is, what does that tell you about the top end of the wealth distribution? That a 2 cent wealth tax, like I said, a little bit more on billionaires, but a 2 cent wealth tax will raise $3 trillion over 10 years. And that's money we reinvest in America.
Senator, though, let me just ask you, and sure, we've talked about this before. What do you think of, for example, dealing with the current structure, which is to say, to deal with the estate tax in a more meaningful way, deal with the step-up basis issue that creates a real problem, that if you could do that unto itself, maybe that would be considered a wealth tax?
So, well, you're right. We do all kinds of things that are a part of dealing with wealth. But understand, a direct wealth tax, a 2 cent wealth tax, is what yields the revenue that we need, just a straight across the board. It's the fairest, it's the most progressive, and here's the thing, it helps level the playing field just a little bit. Right now, the 99% of America, that's everybody who doesn't have wealth of $50 million or more, they paid last year about 7.2% of their total wealth in taxes. The top 0.1%, the people who would be covered by the wealth tax, they paid about 3.2%, less than half. You put a 2-cent wealth tax on them, and the playing field is at least a little more level. It's still tilted in favor of the giant millionaires and the billionaires. So this is about just trying to level it out so everybody in America gets a chance.
Hi, Senator. I sent you that picture. We'll always have Cincinnati, as you know. My kids still talk about it. I'm softening you up a little.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yep, you were there for Hillary Clinton back. It was about 4 or 5 years ago at that great hotel.
I remember.
I happened to be there, and my daughter. Obviously, you're inspiration to all young women, and my son too, actually. But all right, now that I've said all that, okay. So bear with me just for a second. So this is not punitive, right? We're not punishing. Okay, it's not punitive. So they haven't broken any laws to accrue all this wealth. Okay, then we are actually deciding that maybe they've made enough to a certain point where they don't need all of it. Now, bear with me for a second. If you're going to do 2% on 50 million, and then when you get up to $1 billion and you're going to do 3%, if we've crossed the Rubicon and said you have more money than you can ever spend and you don't need it and you need to help out the rest of us, why not make it truly progressive and do 10% at $1 billion? Do 20% at $10 billion? Why not do it that way? Once you get started and raise some real money, what would be the problem? Why would Bezos do 3% when some poor schmo at only 50 million does 2%?
So look, I'm just a girl from Oklahoma. I think $3 trillion actually sounds like a lot of money. And raising $3 trillion that we can reinvest in our economy. For just a minute, can we talk about what that 2 cent, 3 cent would be? It's not punitive on those at the top. They can still grow their fortunes. But here's the thing. It's enough for universal child care. It's enough for universal pre-K. It's enough to make sure that every baby in this country has good care and to raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America.
You didn't answer me. No. Make it 10 times as good. Make it, if you're going to decide that some people have too much, and 50 million is too much. And you see, this looks to me like we're changing the rules of the game that go back centuries for if you've paid your taxes on the way in and accrued this. And a lot of these people would rather do really good things with the money than they don't think the government does it well. So, that's another issue that I'm hearing from a lot of people, that they want to give it to Harlem, the Harlem Fire, the things that they do. But go back to the original thing. Why not make it 5% or 10% on people that are really loaded?
Okay, I'm loving this morning. I cannot believe that I've gotten you to say that we should tax the rich more, Joe.
It's not hurting me.
But I'm
loving
Senator. This moment. But do remember, this is just like we do on real estate taxes. We say every year, not as a punishment, you pay real estate taxes. And we want to make sure that those who have pay a percentage. Now, I hear you about the percentages. You want to make the argument to pay an even greater percentage? Make the argument. The point I'm trying to make is we can make a modest change, and those at the top would still not be paying as much of their wealth in taxes as the 99%, and it would be transformative. Transformative for our children, transformative for what we could invest in infrastructure, transformative for how we could build a future. That $3 trillion, that goes a long way in America toward creating opportunity, not just for those at the top, but creating it for everyone else. I think it's a great place to start.
Hey, Senator, it's Becky.
Hi, Becky.
I'm not going to... Hi, good to see you. I'm not going to get out a violin, a world's smallest violin for any of these people, but I will say many of them have the equity that's built up because they founded a company, have done something, and they still are worth all of this money because they own a massive amount in the company. They don't want to sell those shares often because they want to maintain control of the company. They take their money and they invest it back into the company, and that in turn creates jobs, which is why we have seen such a phenomenal American economy where these things happen. Would you force people to sell shares in their company, force them to do something else? And are you worried that that would in turn slow the job creation?
So the answer is no. There's lots of technical pieces about what you do if people are liquidity constrained. But Becky, I'm going to give you the reverse answer to Joe. It's 2 cents. Come on. We're talking about fortunes that are growing now at what? 6%, 8%, 10%, 12%. And we're saying you can keep growing your fortunes. Just pitch in 2 cents so everybody else gets a chance. And by the way, let me make the pitch to the people who really are investing in their businesses. How do businesses thrive? They thrive when there's good infrastructure. And our infrastructure is so badly outdated. And why? Because we don't have the money to spend on it. Businesses thrive when they have well-educated employees. And yet we're not spending to educate our kids. I talked about preschool. How about K-12? How about making college universal and giving all of our kids a chance to develop to their full potential? That's going to be good for those businesses as well. We want to build an America that works better. And believe me, the guys at the top, they'll do great in an America like that.
Let me ask you about share buybacks. This is something I've also heard you talk about recently, where you said share buybacks is market manipulation. I mean, share buybacks in a lot of ways, if you're just thinking of it as a partnership, and I know that, legally you've looked through all of these things, you're a professor on these issues, but if you want to buy out your partners, your partner wants out, you buy back the shares. I mean, that doesn't sound to me like market manipulation. It just sounds like the way businesses work.
No, if you want to buy your partner shares and you want to hold your partner shares, that's fine. But that's not what share buybacks are.
That's what the company is doing. Buying back.
No, well, share buybacks are going into the market and pumping up the price of your shares by sucking back in, by using your own cash, not to invest in business. Look, I'm not the one who started on the idea that this was market manipulation. This was the view of the SEC back in the 1980s. And that was, there is no reason for a company to move into the market and buy anonymously thousands of its own shares for any reason other than to raise the price of its shares. And why do they want to raise the price of their shares? Because executive compensation is tagged to that price, or because they have set
I understand the executive compensation, and I understand executive compensation shouldn't be tied to it. I can understand executive compensation not being tied to earnings per share, because that you could maneuver over a short period of time. But it seems to me that there are times when a company should. Well, it seems to me that there's a very good time for companies to buy back shares when they think the market's undervaluing those shares, and they're better off bringing in and making sure that all the shareholders have a bigger part of the company, and maybe shrinking the number of partners they have out there.
That's what dividends are for. If you think that you have excess cash and don't have a business opportunity, put it out there in dividends. But the purpose of going into the market anonymously, buying up those shares, is to do nothing but inflate your own share price. It just doesn't have another purpose.
Senator, 2 final questions from me, and one may be philosophical, but it is in practice how the wealth tax would work. What would happen if in a given year your net worth was valued at $50, $100 million, $1 billion, or whatnot? Never realized, of course, you pay the tax on it, and the next year somehow, for whatever reason, you get wiped out. I know nobody's thinking that Jeff Bezos is getting wiped out tomorrow, but I know there's a lot of people who think, for example, that Tesla stock is a particularly volatile stock. And so one year, Elon Musk may pay one rate, and then the next year clearly wouldn't be paying on that. Do you take that as a loss against that, or no?
No, you just don't pay taxes that year. What do you do on real estate? Your real estate is valued every year, and you pay taxes on how it's valued. And if your real estate becomes worthless, you don't pay taxes on it. There's nothing unusual about this. What we've done is try to streamline it. So, for example, it's set up now to say we're not going to collect taxes on any asset worth less than $50,000. So this is not intrusive. It's not about coming into people's homes and valuing their sub-zeros or figuring out what their 4-year-old cars are worth. But it says if you've got a fortune above $50 million, you pay on it. And if your fortune is below $50 million, you don't. Good for you. Either way. I mean, I think most people would rather be rich and pay 2 cents, but it's not, this is not very fancy. It really is a tax on fortunes above $50 million. Now, we do understand the direction we've been going. This pandemic has created more billionaires. The people at the top are not barely hanging on by their fingernails at a time when people making less than $30,000 in America have an unemployment rate at about 20%.
Right.
The folks at the top increased their wealth by $1.3 trillion. So this is just trying to say, when you're in that space, you got to pay 2 cents, 3 cents.
Senator, wanted to get you to weigh in on two other quick things.
Sure.
One is just, we talk about Bitcoin virtually every day these days. It will have an implication on your tax proposal, perhaps, again, given the volatility of it. There are people like Janet Yellen who are warning that this is both speculative in nature and is going to potentially end badly. Do you have a view?
Yeah, I think that Janet's a really smart woman.
That's all you're going to say about Bitcoin.
Well, speculative in nature and going to end badly. I don't think Janet left a lot of room for ambiguity there.
Well, and by the way, I should say, I'm not sure she said it necessarily could end badly, but it could end badly for some. Wanted to also get you to weigh in on another headline that a lot of people are talking about this morning, and I know that is a big issue in the Democratic Party, which is, can you speak to what's happening with the governor of this state where we are, New York, Andrew Cuomo, and just the number of women that have come forward in recent days, and what you think it means and what he should or should not do?
Right. I think there should be a full independent investigation by somebody appointed by the AG without any interference from Governor Cuomo's office. Investigate.
Senator, it's me again. It's me again. It went so well last time, and you've got me on your side now.
All right, good.
Well, no, you don't. But anyway, I can see that people that are doing really well need to chip in more. I'm not sure how we do it. I'm not sure that's the best way. I don't know. It just seems to go against property law for years. But that's not what I'm talking about now. I'm going back to the buybacks. So just balance sheet management. A company is growing, so it issues a lot of new shares. That would be considered, in your logic, as manipulation for the stock to go down, and it's really not. They're just trying to make. Okay, let's say they've issued too many. But if they issued too many in the past, and now they're looking at their shares outstanding, and they think, wow, interest rates are zero. But I don't want to buy it. I'm thinking about Buffett. I don't want to buy any of these companies because they're overvalued right now. I think my company is the cheapest thing there. I want to bring in some of those shares that I issued previously. And even if it does help the stock rise, why is that so bad for shareholders, for pension plans that own the stock, for state retirement plans that own the stock? You reduce the float, earnings per share goes up, the stocks go up, everybody's doing better, income inequality narrows. We're all winning, Senator. We're all winning. Come on. What do you mean, come on?
Come on. This is nothing but paper manipulation. Everybody's doing better. Listen to yourself. Nothing about the business changed. They're still turning out the same number of widgets at the same cost and selling them to the same customers. Nothing changed. But they got a little fluff and buff in their stock. And how did they do that? By taking their excess cash and saying, geez, we can't figure out anything to do with this cash. We're not going to give it back to our investors.
You're going to put the government in
the investment decision that the only investment in America that makes any sense.
Senator, you're going to put the governor in the business of managing the balance sheets for these companies that are trying to do what they think is right for their capital structure. And no one wants that. Right?
So, you don't think they're at all influenced, that they're just trying to fluff up their stock prices?
No, I resemble that word. I don't like that.
Their job is to do the business.
Okay,
and
Senator.
if they have business